Good morning, everybody. I'm just letting everybody in. I just want to make sure you can hear me okay. You can just do a thumbs up if my mic is clear and perfect. You guys can stay muted and we will use chat, and then I will have an opportunity for questions as we go through this as well. It's not going to take very long, I promise. All right, well, I'm going to unpause the recording, and I'm recording it just so that obviously, even though I gave 3 different times of day, it doesn't meet everybody's schedule, and that's okay. So I'm Michelle Carlisle. My role here at the Educational Service Center is officially in the technology department, but within that, I support primarily all of my world language teachers who deliver world language throughout the state of Ohio. I have a large Chinese program, a very large American Sign Language program, and I also manage all of the Zoom accounts and some of those other things, but you'll find me within the role of technology. So I just want to go ahead and make sure everybody clearly hears me say, and I'll say it again, I do nothing with Strategic other than use it myself. Strategic and MySCView is a payroll, fiscal, HR program. Strategic is the application that holds your requisitions, your mileage and timesheets, our purchase orders. It is a fiscal product. Fiscal creates the accounts, HR populates that. I'm simply a user, but as more and more and more technology tickets came in about mileage, it became easier to host 3 trainings than it was to continue to grab and close tickets and say, please call Andrea. So I hope that with a quick overview with the MySCView and the new way we're doing mileage, a lot of you get more comfortable with it and feel that once you've seen it a couple of times, it's more intuitive. And we're happy to provide that when we realize that what we thought was something super easy is causing some questions. Sometimes it's easier just to do something like that. So that's the reason behind this. I'm going to do a screen share because many of you are on single devices. I know you probably will not be able to walk through it with me, but I'm going to post this recording. You can go back through it again. The other thing I'm going to do now that everybody's in the call, and then you can grab this and bookmark it, I'm going to place in the chat right now a link to a MySCView help desk screenshots. Now, hear me say this. It was not created by the ESC. Therefore, some of the categories, functions, and names will not match what you see when you sign in. But it is a screenshot, step by step, of where in Strategic you click what to go and open and report your mileage, which is what we're going to do collectively today. But if you need to review it and don't want to watch the video, this link gives you an opportunity to see that as well. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Now, I'm purposely sharing my desktop, not tab. And the reason I'm doing that is because I would like for everybody to watch me open an incognito window. So my desktop, when I first start to do this, is going to show your Zoom call and my icons, and it'll be a little messy. And then I will go back out and do a tab. But it's really, it's very helpful when you are doing anything in the MySCView to open it in an incognito window. In fact, if you write requisitions, you are required to open the requisition link as an incognito window. But just as a general rule, sometimes it's going to remove a lot of hiccups if you start your browser tab in an incognito window. When you're working in multiple districts and multiple buildings, it's especially helpful. So to do that from Chrome, you're clicking on the 3 small dots, which mine says update at the right, choosing incognito window, and then you're going to the website, myscview.com. And then you're going to click on the Google tab. So it's the second tab over. And the database is always ECOESC.
Michelle, what's the Google shortcut for incognito?
I don't use shortcuts because I'm on a Mac.
Mm. Oh, okay.
So
Because I use the
unfortunately,
shortcut.
you can message Dana quickly and ask Dana.
No,
I am soundly Mac never changing. So those shortcuts don't really apply to me very often. I
I think
apologize
it's
about that.
Control Shift N. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, that's what I use, John. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then because you're in an incognito window, it will ask you to sign in. Use your Google credentials, your work, your ECOESC login. FYI, that's something that we actually get a fair amount of calls, especially around payday for. Our initials and what our ESC email is. So just when it's asking you to sign in, it's always going to be your @ECOESC email. And again, because I'm on the incognito window, it is making me do these extra steps. But adding that layer is helpful in terms of just a reminder. Many times when you sign in to Strategic, it's going to have updates. My Strategic is going to look a little bit different because I am an approver of my staff. But when you get logged in, when you've chosen the database, the ECO ESC, you've logged in with your ESC credentials, you're looking for the area that says expenses mileage. And I'm going to stop share and go back and reshare just that tab at this point so that it's a little less congested. So just to recap what I did, from the signed in screen, I went to expenses and mileage. When you have mileage in draft form, or it has, why is my screen sharing paused? I didn't pause my screen share. Isn't it fun when Zoom does something fun and unexpected? There we go. So when you are signed in and you have started mileage for the month and it's in draft form, or you currently have mileage in the approval pathway, this will be the menu you see. If you don't, mine has 3 tabs. You likely might just have grayed out sections. We don't use leave requests from the strategic system. We are only looking at expenses. And then if you're a timesheet report, that could be gray or not gray, but that's what you're viewing. This mileage log is going to appear in the expenses tab. Over here on the status, so I'm going to just scroll across. This is not the entry screen. Let me say it again. This is not the entry screen. Mileage will not appear chronologically by day in this screen. This is the screen that shows the monthly report. Okay. So over to the right, you're going to see the status. Draft for me is September's mileage. I do not use Google tracking. I do not do mileage at the end of every month. I would never remember where I was going. I do mileage by the day or when I go somewhere. That's how I do it. You do you. But if it says draft, this is the month, the form you're submitting. You're only submitting 1 mileage form a month. So it's going to say draft. You see, this one says needs submission, which I have a question about. This is actually in workflow. So when I click on my second one that was started August 2nd and says needs submission, if I go to edit on that one, it's going to tell me it's locked in workflow. That means it's either frozen at Nick or it's in Lori's queue to verify the mileage and the travel. Not sure where, but I can't edit that anymore. So I can use the back arrow, go back to expenses and mileage. And when I click the check at the left on the one that says draft, once it's started, you edit. The only time you use add new is when you're adding a new month's form. The button that says add new creates a new entry for submission, the form, not the single trip. So once you've started a draft for September, you're going to put a check mark in the left and click edit. That opens what is the actual mileage form. Okay, does that make sense so far? I'm going to stop share. I hate to stay shared the whole time. Thumbs up. Is that making it a little bit more clear, Holly?
Michelle, will you say that one more time?
I sure will.
Said.
Yep, I sure will. I'll go back to share screen and I'll say that again. So I'm going to click the back arrow just so you can go back and see that. I'll show you how to get the draft next because I've already started. Add new from this screen starts a new monthly form. You'll use that again when you go to October. Or if you would use it separately for receipts, that's a different topic. But once you have mileage started for September and it stays in draft for September, you click a checkbox in the one that says draft, and then you're editing that. You're not adding new from this screen. When you click edit, you're opening it. You don't need to give a description. Your director knows who you are, what your job description is. That description comes into play if you're attaching a receipt for a mileage and meeting expense reimbursement. We're not talking about that today. You would use it for that. Under line details, we're talking about mileage. Now, you can see all these other things. We're starting with mileage. You enter the date. So let's pretend I'm going to Riverview after this training today. I'm going to click on date, the 13th. I don't put my miles in here. It will calculate it for you. You don't need anything to do with the fund code. That helps when you're opening incognito. By default, those will stay gray. The description of your travel from. Many of our sites are pre-populated, but not all of them. So when you click the down arrow from, you can start typing or you can scroll. We're leaving from. I'm located in the New Philadelphia office. But I'm traveling to a district, a building that isn't yet populated. So if I know the address, which I thought I did and I don't, it's something State Route 60. So I'm going to Google it quick. Those of you that save your Google Pins and use your mileage, kudos to you. Love it. I just don't do that. I turn tracking off on my phone actually. So I copied and pasted that address, and then you can go ahead and add Riverview High School. Click in the front of it. Leave a space if it will. Sometimes it doesn't. But when you're typing the address and it's in the box, you're going to do this next step twice. If the address is in the dropdown, you don't do this step twice. But because I added the address manually, because it's not in the dropdown, I'm adding the location first. See how it repositioned the geopin, the address with the zip code? And it's still not down here? It's because this description of travel to wasn't in the dropdown. It likes what it sees now, and now I'm going to add it. Now, on September 13th, you can see a trip that starts from 834 East High Avenue, originates and goes to State Route 60, Warsaw, Ohio. Okay. Obviously, you have to come back home or back to your office. Once you've added that trip, your beginning destination to your ending destination, once you've added that, if you click one time on it, it turns a light blue, mark it round trip. It reverses it for you. Okay. Easy enough. If you feel the need to make a comment on that trip, you can. I'm sorry. Go ahead with the question.
I did that, and I noticed that the like when you it's not in the drop down box, you put in the address, it'll choose the quickest route instead of the route you actually took, because I compared it to my Apple Maps and I had to go in and edit that. Is that okay?
So you're going to want to talk to your director, but it is typically the practice of Lori, who does pay the mileage, at least in the past. Mel is on this call. She may correct me. But in the past, it's been the directive of Lori that it is the shortest route, not the route taken. Mel, are you still on the call? Can you clarify that from an executive director standpoint?
Yes, yeah, I believe that's the case. That's correct.
Okay, like for example, like I came from St. Clairsville to Cambridge, and I took Interstate 70 to 77, and instead it wanted me to take like Route 250 up
40
like,
to 222.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll want to talk about that with your executive director, who can discuss that then with Lori Wright. But it is the standard practice that the mileage is reimbursed on the shortest route as it shows up in the maps.
Yeah.
And again, that's not me saying it. That's what has been the practice.
Yeah, that is correct. And I think, I'm not sure who's asking the question, but I would say definitely reach out to your executive director.
Okay.
Thanks, Mel. I didn't want to put words in your mouth. But yeah. I appreciate that, Mel. I didn't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but that's been
yeah, you're welcome.
So, so with that, once you've put a trip in, then you just highlight the single trip and then choose round trip. And it reverses that. So before I go any further, I'm going to delete that so I don't forget, since this is my actual mileage submission for the month. And I don't think at this point I have to go to Riverview after the call. Fun fact, when you've chosen round trip and then you subsequently delete it, it will delete both entries for you. You don't have to catch it. Okay. Another interesting piece about this, let's say you are someone that does the same trip multiple times. Let's say you're assigned 3 days a week to the same building and it is the same route and you're just going to go there. You can build that once and then highlight that one trip and you can click copy. And it allows you to put every date. So I'm going to copy that first date. Well, I'm going to do that trip again tomorrow on the 14th. I'm going to press save. And because I marked it round trip when I did it the first time, it will enter that again as a round trip. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that again so I don't forget. But what I did, so let me say that again for those of you that do the same trip on multiple days. Once you've got it in once, you can highlight it, click once, click copy, choose the date that you need it to appear again. You can do that as many times as you need to throughout the month. And if it was already billed as a round trip, it will then build it again as a round trip for you. Make sense? Awesome. Now, again, if you choose to add a comment, let's say you're someone that's traveling more infrequently, like my American Sign Language teacher who just emailed me right before the call and said, hey, Buckeye Trail doesn't have class on Friday and Buckeye Trail has a fair on Friday. Highland has early dismissal because of homecoming. I'm going to go to Edison Local. This is a teacher who does not normally have mileage, except for when they're going out to a site. So her name is Melinda. In Melinda's case, she's going to put a travel from her home office where she works. She lives in Youngstown. She's putting her home office address, which is where she's assigned, to a district we don't serve because it's an American Sign Language class. And in the comments, she's going to put in-person site visit. You don't have to, but it helps for those of us looking at it to think, well, that's weird. That's not a person that typically has mileage. What's it for? Oh, that's why. Again, you don't have to. That's up to each of your executive directors as to how they want that communicated, but it allows you to. When you've built the mileage, then if you're doing it all at once, it's all done and you're ready to turn that in so that it can be evaluated for your check. Hit submit. Do not hit submit until you're all done entering mileage for that month. Submit is when you're ready for your director to approve it. Anything before I'm ready for my director to approve all the mileage I drove in September, save draft. And when you click save draft, it takes you back to the list where the draft is. To start it again, you click on the checkbox, you click on edit, it opens back up. You can continue to add that mileage at that point. Submit is when you're ready to turn it in for the month. Now I'm going to stop sharing here. I have a couple of teachers notoriously who, they're my Chinese friends and I love them dearly and they think so differently than us. And one of the ways they think so differently is we're going to turn all the mileage in for the year and then I'm going to get one big check. And every year I remind them that I haven't seen mileage for a couple of months. Are we doing mileage? Oh, I'd like one check in May. We're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to do that. So what I tell my staff is I need this done and I want 1 month's mileage on 1 month's sheet. Each of your directors may do that differently. My mileage goes to Nick for approval. My staff mileage goes to Nick for approval. I don't want Nick to have to come and ask me about 2 or 3 months. I want mileage for August to be on August form and mileage for September to be on September form. So this will allow you to build mileage more than a date. It's not, the system doesn't lock you in by the month. It's cleaner when September 1st through September 30th is one submission, and then you start a new one for October. Those are things that make it easier on the people that have to check that work, check the mileage, document travel for those of us that are invoicing back out, and all of the things that go on the back end of someone receiving a mileage check. But with that really is the essentials of the training. So I'm going to stop and make sure there aren't clarifying questions anyone needs or something glaringly obvious that I might have missed. And if there's not, I'll end it and post the recording later.
Michelle, you
Yes.
said about that need submission, because that's what all of ours is showing also. So you said that's something that you're not real sure what's going on.
I'm assuming, I know just from being here in the New Philadelphia office, I know that strategic has been very flaky for a few days. And
Okay.
also on the fiscal side of things, they were working through August bookend or August month end for some of like treasurer's reporting and those types of things, which typically means that things that are happening in September or that will process don't happen until August balances. Again, I'm not positive, but that's standard at the beginning of the month that August gets closed and then we move on to things that are being turned in. I do have a question into Lori Wright to make sure that it's at least been seen, because I know that my mileage has been seen by my director, Nick, and it's still marked locked in workflow. So the presumption is it's going to come back out of strategic at some point and then be released for pay. Mileage at this point, no, there is not a print from this screen that I have seen. So that was a question in the chat. And we don't, of course, get that printout on our mileage checks currently either. But there is not a print screen. When you click on print, I'm going to push save draft. And if I go back to this and I try to export it, that's what the export is, it's only exporting the rows, these. So when it goes out to the spreadsheet, it shows you an export of this row. And when I go into my
You're not screen
draft,
sharing.
oh, thanks. It's my first day. I apologize about that. When I go back to the list of miles and mileage forms, if I click on the checkbox and go to export, that would be where you would look for print. It's only exporting the rows. So you literally get a spreadsheet that has this information, not the trip by trip. And when you go into edit, there is nothing in here that allows you to print this log out. So, are there other questions?
I just
The
want to make
goal
sure
would
that
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I just want to make sure that I definitely understood what you said at the beginning. An expense is a new entry. Like if I was get like a reimbursement for like something I have to go to, that is separate than the
Yes,
mileage, and that is add new.
Yes, at this point, what I've been told is I'm doing my expense, not on my mileage form. I would expect because it is all in one place, that it can be, I mean, obviously the system allows for that. Right now, my expenses are one-offs. So for me, like if I'm out of town doing teacher evaluations, that's a one-off. So I'm going to do the expense report separately, but it would make sense at some point to put it in with the mileage and just keep it all for 1 month and then turn that in. There is a caveat to that. The receipts do have to be in a single file. So that's, the reason I said expense training would be something separate, not the least of which is creating a single file for all of your receipts is new to most of our staff at the ESE. So, yep. And again, your directors will have the final say on some of these procedural things. I'm just the tech person who uses it with my own staff and has been here a very long time. So in no way is what I'm saying ever going to supersede who you direct report to. And you could screenshot it. Yes. There has been, upon a couple of occasions, a GeoPin. I've noticed it. Marina Colombo had one occasion, and I had one occasion. The GeoPin, when we typed in the address, it picked up completely random and made a 0.25 total distance. And it wouldn't pick up the actual physical address of that particular location. We just chose to save draft, go back in, delete that date entry, and start again after relogging in, and it did correct it. If at any point you find a mileage entry that was grossly underpaid and Lori Wright didn't catch it when she evaluates that, that would happen. But for most of us, I know a lot of you on the call are brand new, but as a rule, Lori Wright spends a lot of time each month just pinpointing mileage to make sure those errors don't occur or that those distances and trips line up. And she catches things like, wait a second, this trip was from here to here and it's more than $2. You'll see that on the old paper form, you would see that in red. She would handwrite that and autocorrect that entry then. But if your account, for some reason, if you're not yet in the MySCView database, when you click on ECOESC and it still doesn't recognize you as a user, that is an Andrea Tinlin ad. The tech department cannot add accounts into MySCView. One of the things they realized when we transitioned to mileage was that while mileage is set up, Andrea has to hand add every staff member who needs to submit mileage. That was new to them. So it's very possible that if it's the first time you're entering mileage, it doesn't recognize your entry. It doesn't recognize your username once you've signed into the ESC database. That's an Andrea Tinlin reach. it's a checkbox for her to fix that. I
Michelle,
hope, oh yes,
when we're using that round trip feature, if we're somewhere that's multiple days, we know that it defaults to the very first day. Does that need to be clarified in the comments anywhere, or
that's what I have done and am recommending. I would assume if that becomes a little bit questionable, or if at some point, some questions happen after auditor's question. So if at some point the auditor says, what is this? There may be something directed to change, but at this point, when it's a round trip on a second day, I still use the round trip feature and then put it in the comments. It was an overnight trip. The return home was the next day or 2 days later. Now that doesn't work well if you have multiple stops within that second day. When I'm teacher evaluating, for instance, and I've gone to Columbus to overnight, and then I'm stopping at all of my sites on my way back to New Philly, I just don't use the round trip when that happens, because you building in those extra stops on the return trip aren't easy. Okay. Hopefully I provided clarification and made it a little simpler for you. The database was very, very slow from Thursday, Friday, and even Monday, but I have noticed an increase in last night and today. So I think the hiccups on the backside of things have been resolved. Again, if you have basic questions, look at that tutorial, reach out if you need anything, but your team or your executive director can help you as well, and you should be all set. I appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time today. Have a great day, everybody.